Welcome, viewers. This story is set in the modern day where tech is the major industry in the world. And in that world was a man named Kincaid. Ethan Kincaid was a man who had learned to manipulate the world around him. A tech mogul with a fortune built on data, he wasn't just a player in the game. He was the one who made the rules. Kincaid controlled the flow of information across the globe, shaping narratives, influencing decisions, and deciding who thrived and who fell. His brilliance in technology was matched only by his ruthlessness, and anyone who tried to oppose him found themselves crushed under the weight of his power. Kincaid's empire was built on the idea that information was the greatest currency. He didn't just gather data, he weaponized it. Personal information, financial records, business dealings, everything was interconnected, and Kincaid had learned how to pull the right strings to get what he wanted. The world saw him as a visionary, but beneath the surface, he was a predator, exploiting every loophole, bending laws, and blackmailing anyone who stood in his way. Few had the courage to stand up to him, and those who did rarely survived long enough to regret it. But Senator Michael Reed was different. A man of principle, Reed had risen through the political ranks, driven by a desire to protect the public from corporate overreach. He had built his career on advocating for the rights of everyday citizens, and his latest target was Kincaid's data empire. Reed was pushing for legislation that would put limits on the collection and sale of personal data, a move that threatened to undermine the very foundation of Kincaid's business. The senator's passion for justice made him popular with the public, but it also made him a threat to those who profited from the status quo, none more so than Kincaid. And Kincaid wasn't about to let anyone strip him of the power he had so carefully cultivated. He needed a solution. Fast. And that's when he turned to Rook. Rook was a name whispered in the darkest corners of the criminal underworld. No one knew his real identity, and very few had ever seen his face. What they did know was that he was the best at what he did. Rook didn't leave evidence. He didn't leave witnesses. He was a ghost, a professional assassin with a reputation for getting the job done quickly and efficiently. Kincaid had used him before, more than once, and Rook had never disappointed. Unlike many in his line of work, Rook wasn't driven by bloodlust or a thirst for violence. He was methodical, almost detached, treating his assignments like any other job. His professionalism was his defining trait. He didn't ask questions, he simply executed his orders. If Kincaid needed someone to disappear, Rook made it happen. No emotions, no complications. When Kincaid gave Rook the order to eliminate Senator Reed, there was no hesitation. Rook had been in the business long enough to know that politics was just another game of power, and people like Reed were the pieces that got moved or removed, depending on who was playing. To Rook, Reed wasn't a person. He was a problem to be solved. A problem that Rook intended to solve swiftly and cleanly. The hit was planned with precision. Senator Reed was scheduled to give a public address at a rally, a perfect opportunity to send a message. Rook watched from a distance, his cold eyes scanning the crowd, waiting for the right moment. He wasn't nervous. He never was. His hand was steady, his movements practiced. In his line of work, hesitation meant failure, and failure wasn't an option. As Senator Reed took the stage, Rook lined up his shot. The world saw a man fighting for justice, a man standing up to corporate greed, but to Rook, he was just another target. He squeezed the trigger, and with a single shot, it was over. The senator collapsed, chaos erupting around him as people screamed and scrambled for safety. But by the time the crowd realized what had happened, Rook was gone, disappearing into the shadows as effortlessly as he had arrived. What Rook didn't know was that he hadn't been alone that day. Harper Grey had been there too. Harper was a woman driven by a different kind of obsession. An investigative journalist with a reputation for digging where others wouldn't, she had spent years investigating Kincaid's shady dealings. She had seen firsthand how his control over data had destroyed lives, people blackmailed, ruined, or silenced when they stood in his way. But no one had been able to touch him. He was too powerful, too well-connected. Every time Harper got close, Kincaid slipped through her fingers. But not this time. Harper had been following leads on Kincaid for months, And when she learned that Senator Reed was pushing legislation that could challenge Kincaid's empire, she knew something big was coming. But she hadn't expected to witness a murder. But when Reed fell to the ground, she instinctively raised her camera. She caught everything: the shot, the chaos, the aftermath. And when she reviewed the footage, her heart raced. For the first time, she had proof. Solid, undeniable proof that could take Kincaid down. The only problem was Rook. Harper knew that if she didn't act fast, Rook would disappear, just like he always did. And if Rook vanished, so would her chance to bring Kincaid to justice. She had to make a move, but she couldn't go to the police. Kincaid's reach was too long, his influence too pervasive. She needed to take matters into her own hands. And that meant finding Rook and convincing him to help her, by any means necessary. Harper wasn't afraid of danger. She had faced it before, but this was different. She wasn't just going up against a corrupt businessman. She was facing a man who had killed without hesitation, a man who could just as easily turn on her if she made one wrong move. But Harper had learned to think on her feet, and she wasn't about to let fear stop her. When Harper finally tracked down Rook, she felt a surge of both fear and determination. The assassin was even colder in person, his expression unreadable, his eyes devoid of empathy. He was a man who lived in the shadows, and Harper knew she was playing a dangerous game. But she had something Rook couldn't ignore: leverage. The footage of him killing Senator Reed was enough to destroy his anonymity, and in his line of work, anonymity was everything. She confronted him, laying out her terms: help her take down Kincaid, or she would release the footage to the world. Rook's reaction was as cold as she expected: no emotion, no anger, just a silent calculation behind his eyes. For a moment, Harper wasn't sure what he would do. She was betting her life on his response, and the tension was unbearable. Harper stood her ground, refusing to back down. Rook's silence stretched on, his decision hanging in the air. Would he comply, or would he eliminate the one person who could threaten his existence? Stay tuned for the next chapter to find out.